All right, welcome to Piute County. We are so excited to be here in Marysvale. The drive here was beautiful. If you weren't able to make the drive with us, we're so glad you're in the online audience and happy to see all of the faces in front of us today. What a lovely audience we have together. And I see people from Kane County, Beaver County, Iron County, Piute County. Did I miss anyone? Kind of Washington County. So thank you for being willing to make that drive here. We have five counties represented in the room and more online. And it's actually 6 counties in the room, right? We have Sanpete counties here too. So cool. 6 counties have traveled to Marysville. It's really, really lovely to see you guys today. As usual, I'm going to introduce FutureReady for anybody who's new here today and who hasn't heard our spiel before. I'll be quick, I promise. So FutureReady is a program that is a collaboration between Southern Utah University, Utah Tech University, and Snow College, and it is funded in part by the Economic Development Administration through a grant that is a 5-year grant. So we're at about a year and a half into our 5-year grant cycle. We also work really closely with the 5-County Association of Governments and R6, and are very appreciative for our local caterer, whose name I have forgotten.
Roger Fulmer.
Roger Fulman?
Fulmer.
Fulmer has provided food for us today. And if you're in the online audience, use your imagination. It smells really, really good in here today. So we are really blessed to hear today from Piute County's recorder and treasurer, Shane Millett, and he's going to give us a little bit of perspective on what's going on in Piute County. The reason that we do that in every county that we go to, a different county every month, is that we want to make sure everyone in the 11-county region that we serve understands what's happening across the rest of the region. When we're spread out the way that we are in rural spaces, a lot of times the support that we get or that we need, we find will come from outside of our own county. There may not be enough resources in the county where you're working, but there are a lot of similar things happening across the 11-county region, and everyone's taking a unique approach. So it's really fun to hear what's happening in each of these different counties, and hopefully it gives you a point of reference for, hey, that's a person who's solving the same problem that I'm solving. Maybe we could get together and talk about it. We have to think more expansively in rural spaces, so we're sort of expanding our field of reference and where our resources come from. So Shane, I'd like to welcome you today. He's already mic'd up and everything. Excellent.
Do we just come up here? Okay, well, I guess I'm Piute County, so I'll welcome you to Piute County and to Marysville. Had a few deer outside the building right there, just took a video of, but that's common here. I guess I've been treasurer recorder now for 34 years, worked for the county. And before that, I started out, I actually graduated from SUSC. And I came back here and was trying to make a go of it with my grandpa's business and try to figure out what I could do here. I graduated in business administration. I wanted to hopefully go in and have my own business of some sort. Didn't work out that way, but anyway, I started volunteering to help with our Economic Development Committee. And back at that time, that was 1987, there was a commissioner that was working pretty hard named Lyndon Romine. The thing I learned from Lyndon Romine, and he's the one, if you may have heard his name because it's usually associated with the Piute ATV Trail. And I think he was one that was really good at looking at he tried to see if he could get a trail together here in the county. And the scope ended up being to where he really couldn't get enough, I guess, backing to have the BLM and the Forest Service and all the people involved taken seriously. And so as he expanded, he got some of the other counties involved, and they basically worked on that. It was really a passion of his to get that done. And I think that was one of the things that showed me at that time, like, hey, sometimes it's better to try to, as you work with other people, network, it can really make a huge difference. And also I saw one of the other things that he did was like, he was hopeful he could get the reservoirs here turned into state parks. And but there wasn't really too much interest in Piute. So he worked and worked until he got a grant to put in a pretty nice boat ramp. And I've seen that happen a number of times where it's like someone takes some initiative, they get part of a project done, and as you see people starting to work on that and people start to catch the vision of what the person sees, then it was a lot easier for him to get that put together that way. But Piute County is a great place to live. We used to have a logo that said it had mining and agriculture and recreation. About 10 years ago, we switched the logo and we kind of dropped the mining and the agriculture. I think we're just recreation now. So you're here at a good time. And I think that more is a marketing thing for the trail and to try to bring visitors in. But we do have a pretty good agricultural base. It's turned into larger scale farms rather than a lot of little small farms like everywhere else. Mining's been up and down, but we do have a large mining company right now back at the old Deer Trail mine. Used to be the rail that came in here. They used to haul ore out of here. They're doing another exploration project right now. And so mining is kind of boom and bust, but it always has been a big part of the county here. And of course, recreation. And sometimes initially I have a couple grandparents that both have their names on a building up at the Piute Otter Creek Reservoir when they first, guys came with horses and teams and dredged and helped put that initial reservoir, Otter Creek Reservoir, in. And that was done for recreation, for agriculture, but it actually turned into something that really brings a lot of visitation to our county with the fisheries with both of those reservoirs. But probably out of time here, but anyway, I appreciate everyone being here. Piute County is a great place to live and to been able to raise my children here. And part of me volunteering on that economic development committee I was there 4 years, and then someone talked me into running for office, and here I've been. So anyway, appreciate all of you, and leave you that.
Thank you, Shane. I think one of my favorite parts of working with FutureReady is getting to travel across the 11-county region and meet all of the wonderful people that are working in rural spaces. And I really appreciate, Shane, what you said about that idea of if somebody invests just a little bit of money or a little bit of effort and energy and they just get something going, one project going, there's a contagious energy to that we want to improve our communities. We want to kind of work together and come together and do something that's meaningful and that helps other people, right? We see that happening across all the 11-county region, that human desire to make things better, to leave the world better than we came into it, I think drives so much of what we do. And it's important for us to have that because the work we do is hard, right? So if we didn't have that drive and that need to connect and make the world better, I think it'd be harder to do what we do. So I sure appreciate that. Thanks. We are talking today about cultures of engagement. And originally the topic was employee engagement. As I have done, I always do a lot of research, a lot of reading. I talk to people, I talk to mentors, I try to connect with people and gather the best information that I can to give you every month. But in researching this topic, I really felt like employee engagement wasn't big enough because if you're only trying to engage your employees, then you have forgotten a big part of that, which is you being engaged yourself, right? That we're trying to create an actual culture of engagement where engaging with one another is just what we do. It's the way that we operate. And so today we're going to be talking about cultures of engagement. We all have a workplace culture already. We're probably part of more than one, actually. We have, our family culture. We may have like a church a culture, a community culture, our workplace culture. We have a culture that's within our workplace, and then we have a culture of the way that we interface with our partners and clients and vendors and customers and those sorts of things. But I want you to think about what culture means to you. When we look at large communities, we think of culture as being represented by the art and the way that a community comes together, sometimes food culture, right? It's often tied to geography, what's happening around us. And that's true in a business as well. what we are learning, and a lot of my content comes from, I take a lot of content from Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Gallup, Workday, those places that are really looking globally at what's happening in the world of work. But I also am looking like Utah Business Daily and the Utah Business Coalitions and associations that are working right here around us. One of the things that we are finding is that for a workplace culture to be really engaging, you have to have a combination of these kind of 4 really important parts. Connection. That is connection between people and also with purpose, right? A connection to the purpose. If your people are not connected to the purpose of what you're doing, you're not going to get great engagement from them. If you are not connected to that purpose, you're not going to get great engagement. And we just like to work with people we like, right? So a connection is a really big deal. If you have a culture of disconnection or you don't have opportunities among your teams for people to be connected, it's really hard for them to stay engaged in the work if they're not also connected to the other people that they're working with. People need a system and an opportunity to develop themselves. So the development component of this is there any place I can go in this company? Can I climb? Can I get new skills? Can I expand the talents and skills that I already have and feel myself growing? And can I grow both financially and in terms of my role within the company? If you have a flat company where there's a ceiling, this is as far as you can go, it's really hard for people to consider that job as a career and something they can commit their life to, right? You're going to get a few years out of them at most. It will be a stepping stone to something else. And sometimes that just is the nature of your business, and you just need to know that, right? If you don't have bigger opportunities to offer people, and be realistic with yourself and with them about it, but know that everyone wants to grow. Everyone wants to grow. We want to be able to evolve ourselves to upskill. So if your company doesn't have opportunities for development, then supporting your employees and your team by helping them connect with other opportunities for development so they can continue to work with you, but they can still be growing and changing, that's going to be important to them. A sense of community, both within your workplace, with your clientele, and in your greater community, is becoming ever more important. If people feel disconnected from a sense of community, they're also disconnected from the purpose of their work, and they won't feel as purposeful about what they're doing. And then flexibility. We're getting a lot of conversations right now in business about how important flexibility is in work. And there are some conversations that I've had where it can become a real sticking point, a real challenge. I'll give you an example. In a manufacturing company where you have 12-hour shifts, like 12 hours on, 12 hours off, that type of a shift, right? And if there's someone missing from the manufacturing team, they work in teams, business doesn't happen, right? You have to have a complete team. Everybody needs to be there. There has to be a person in every station for that to work. So flexibility can be really hard. It's really hard for somebody to say, oh, my child has a parent-teacher conference at 2 o'clock today, so I'm going to be gone for an hour and a half in the middle of my shift. In an advanced manufacturing sort of situation, that's really hard to do, right? It's easier to do in some other types of industries, but really understanding where you can be flexible and where you cannot be flexible, and being super transparent about that up front with your employees will help them to decide, does this job have the kind of flexibility that I need in my life, right? Can I commit to it because even though it's inflexible or rigid here's where it becomes flexible. Does that make sense? We also have a lot of conversations with folks about generational expectations for flexibility, and I'm sure that you have probably experienced that newer generations of workers, it has become much more normal in their world for the workplace to be flexible than it was when I was growing up, for example, right? So understanding what people's expectations are and managing those expectations by being really transparent is a really, really important thing in terms of workplace culture, and helping them know what you expect and you know what they expect, so you can negotiate through that. So you can be flexible where you can be, and you have hard lines on what things you cannot be flexible with, okay? That's just a kind of a broad overview of cultural expectations that would make your workplace a better place, that would make people want to engage. And our next piece here, I have an excellent example. I have invited Todd Jackson from Pine Creek Cabins to come and speak with us, and just to share ways that he has experienced employee engagement, and we're really glad to welcome you here. Todd, would you take the floor?
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. Just by way of introduction real quickly, my name is Todd Jackson. I have been in corporate finance for the last 30 years. I've worked in 6 early stage companies, and recently I made the shift to just run Pine Creek Cabins and have a little bit of change of pace in my life. But lots of experience with what Amy's talking about here. But what I'd like to do is share a story from one of my favorite management books. It's called Gung Ho, is the name of the management book, if you've read it before. So the story goes, there was a woman that was wanting to be promoted. She really wanted to have her own plant in this large manufacturing company. And she was very insistent upon it. And finally her boss said, look, I've got one plant, it's available, but it's really struggling. Are you sure you want to try this? Yes, I really want to try this. So she went to this plant. It was a very rural area. And sure enough, as she's reviewing the records of the company and the operations, it's not going well. It's a very low efficiency plant. Their margins aren't great. Their output's not great. Their quality's not great. But there was one department within this manufacturing plant that's doing really well. So she calls the head of the department. It was a Native American man. She calls him in and said, will you tell me what you're doing that your department is doing so well? He said, I need to show you. Meet me after work, bring a warm jacket. So she meets him after work. They hop in his pickup truck. He drives her out to the woods. She's getting a little worried, but drives her out to the woods. And he said, okay, we're going to sit here. I'm going to take a nap, and you're going to observe. And so he takes a nap, and she observes, and he wakes up about an hour and a half later. Said, what did you observe? And she said, well, I saw mostly squirrels. Well, what were they doing? Well, they were very frantic. They were running around, gathering nuts, chattering at each other, hiding the nuts in the trees. And he said, okay, the first step in a high-performing team is everybody has to be busy at an important task. Those squirrels need the nuts to survive the winter. So first step to having a highly engaged team is everyone has to have an important task, and they need to be busy. She said, oh, that's great. Is that what you do? And he said, yeah, but let's meet again tomorrow after work, and I want you to observe something else. So the next day after work, she meets him again, hop in his pickup truck, and he drives her to this beautiful creek. And he said, I'm going to take a nap, you observe. So he went to sleep, and he woke up and said, what did you observe? She said, well, there was a family of beavers down here in the creek. And some of them were like gnawing on trees and cutting them down and hauling them to the dam. Some of them were like working on this lodge thing. And some of them were like taking willows and like taking them under the water. He said, yeah, so this family of beavers, they all have an important task, but they have different tasks. They work together. Some of the younger ones are grabbing the willows and putting them on the bottom for food. Some of the older ones are gnawing the bigger trees and putting them in the dam. And then the others are working on the lodge. So they all have an important task. But unlike the squirrels, they're organized in doing something a little different. They all know that their place in this family unit. And she said, so that's the secret. And he said, there's one more thing I need to teach you. Meet me tomorrow after work. So again, they hop in his pickup truck, and he drives her to a marsh and says, okay, you wait, you observe, I'm going to take a nap. So he takes a nap and wakes up. What did you observe? She said, well, the most common thing I saw were these geese. And they're flying over in these big V formations. He said, that's exactly what I wanted you to see. She said, what were they doing? She said, well, I don't know. They were headed out, but they're sure making a lot of noise. He said, well, what they're doing is they have to get south, to survive the winter. And the goose at the front of the V formation is taking most of the work. And all of the rest of the geese in that formation have less wind resistance because they're in this formation. He said, but the reason they're honking and making all that noise is they're encouraging the goose at the front. And they will switch places over time. He said, so what you need for a really effective team is everyone needs to have a task that they're busy at. They need to know how their task fits into the whole, like the beavers, and they need to encourage one another. So what I've found as kind of a secret to managing a good team is make sure that everyone knows what they're doing. You know, have a list for them. These are your responsibilities. These are what you do. Then get the team together and say, this is how you fit together. You do A, you do B, you do C, and when those three things come together, this is the outcome. And then foster among the team a sense of camaraderie. Have them celebrate when something goes well. Celebrate when the team as a whole is doing well. And one of the primary ways that I would do that with my teams, I would get them together twice a year for some sort of an offsite where we would get away from our work environment, where we would brainstorm our goals. We'd go through what everyone on the team does. So everyone knew there was nothing secret about tasks or responsibilities. And then we would set goals together. And we would set goals at the team level. Like when everyone is doing A, B, and C, this is what we should see as an output, as an outcome. And everyone had a part in setting those goals. They felt invested in those goals. And then every week in staff meeting, or at least every other week, we would review how we were doing towards those goals, and everyone would get a chance to share how they're doing against their three biggest objectives or goals for the year. And it went a long ways to getting rid of competition within the team, making everyone feel part of the team, giving them opportunities to grow, and giving them the chance to see what it takes to take the next step. Because they were seeing their mentor in the team already, you know, the person that's above them, what they are doing. Anyway, that was one thing I found to be a very effective way to create good teams.
Thank you so much, Todd. So I did not write a single word of what Todd said, but he could not have introduced what we're talking about next any better. That was perfect. Thank you. Okay, I initially introduced the Will Skill Matrix in November. How many of you were here in November or saw what we talked about in November? We talked about wearing all the hats. Okay. In that conversation, we were really talking about you as the leader and how you have to wear so many hats, especially working in rural space and in small business. You don't have just one job description. You might be doing 5 different job descriptions, right? And how do you manage that? How do you kind of control that and make it sustainable so you don't burn yourself out, so you have enough energy and time to get all those things done so that you're actually effective at those things? So I introduced the Will Skill Matrix at that point. But I want to reintroduce it here because I'd like you to extend, for those of you who were here during that conversation, extend that view to your teams as well, right? And understand that for everyone on your team, for everyone regardless of what role they are in, there's low to high level of will or passion, desire to do the jobs that they have to do, and low to high levels of skill for the job that they have to do. And some of that's based on experience, and some of it's based on training, some of it's just based on natural talent, right? So if your will to do something, your passion and excitement for a particular job is very, very low, you don't want to do that job. It is your least favorite job, you do not enjoy it, okay? Are you thinking about a job that you have to do that you have low will for? Has to be done, but it's not your favorite. And then you have high will jobs, ones that are really engaging for you. They make your curiosity click. You're passionate about them. You enjoy that part. You have a lot of drive to do those things. You're attracted to that part of the work. It's probably the reason that you have the job in the first place. It's the thing that attracted you to do it in the first place, right? And then on the skill side, you have low skill because it's something that has to be done and you've just got to figure it out, but you've never done it before. You've had no training to do that before. You don't have a lot of experience in it, so you're just figuring it out as you go along, all the way up to a job that you have a lot of skill for. You have both natural talent, experience, and training in doing that job, right? And all of the jobs that you have to do are going to fall somewhere within this matrix. It is the same for every member on your team. One of the things that I think is important is, Todd, when you mentioned the idea of each of the jobs, the Beavers' jobs are different, right? They're not all exactly the same jobs. That's the way that it is for most of our teams, right? I can tell you that having Daniel in Washington, D.C. this week has been challenging for our team, right? We met and we created the plan. Here's what everybody's going to do to make sure that we can get here and get this event to go off. But I'll tell you, we've been nervous to do it without him because he has very high skill in what he's done. He's done it for a while. He really knows what he's doing. And the rest of us don't do his job very often, right? This is the first time that we've had to do that. So one of the things that I think is most important to call out here is that everyone on your team has jobs that they have low skill and low will to do, right? They're working in their failure zone. The more often that your team members are working in your failure zone, the more disconnect you're going to see, the more breakdown, the less engagement. Think about if you had to do your least favorite job that you are least skilled in doing a whole lot of the time, how long would you do that before you started to check out mentally and emotionally from that work? It doesn't take very long before you say, nah, I'm done. There's got to be something better that I can do with my time. So when you look at the jobs that your team are doing, and especially if you're having ongoing mentoring conversations, you're checking in with them to see how they're doing, making sure that their work is going apace. If you find that they're spending a lot of time in their failure zone, this is an opportunity for you to make some changes, for you to brainstorm together. How can we get you out of that zone? How can we get you into a zone where you're going to be a lot more effective? The default zone we spend a lot of time into, and we can spend more time in the default zone. Those are jobs that you're good at, but you just don't love, right? We all have those. I don't love it, but I know I'm good at it. I probably have the most skill on the team to do it, so it probably needs to be me. That's a default position, and people can live a little bit longer in the default position. When we're talking about engagement, though, we don't want people to just be living there and just going through the motions in auto mode all the time. We want their innovation and their creativity. We want their problem solving. We want their passion in the work. So again, if you have people that are working a lot in their default zone, you need to kind of look at, do we need to do some shifts in who's doing what jobs? Do we need to give them an opportunity to maybe try something different that will turn on their curiosity and their imagination, so that they don't go into auto mode and just stay in auto mode all the time? Nobody likes to work in auto mode. Interestingly, a person does not have to have tremendous skill to be very, very engaged in their work if they're interested by it, right? If it captures their imagination, if they see deep purpose, if they understand how important it is, and how it connects to the bigger work that you do. So even if they have low skill, if they have high will, they're in the growth zone. And man, people love to be in the growth zone. It's okay with me that I'm not really, really good at a particular part of my job if it is exciting to me. If I feel like I am learning, we talked about development, right? If I feel like I'm increasing my skill and my imagination is turned on and I'm excited about it. So you can spend a tremendous amount of time in the growth zone. Again, think about a person who may have the potential to learn something new and they might be really excited by that. Are they the most skilled person on your team to do it? Maybe not. But if it keeps them engaged mentally, if it keeps them emotionally happy about what they're doing, putting people in the growth zone is a really, really solid strategy for engagement. And then finally, of course, there's the sweet spot. We cannot all live in our sweet spot all the time, but strengths-based leadership always tells us if you can find people's strengths and let them be doing at least the majority of their work, as much work as possible in their sweet spot, where they're strong and passionate, that is where you're going to find some really significant success for every member of your team. When we talked in November about wearing all the hats, one of the things that we mentioned was if a lot of people on your team, or if you have a very small team, so of course everyone's going to have to do some jobs they just don't enjoy or they're not very good at. What you can do, a strategy we talked about at that point, was sitting down at the table with your team members and negotiating, okay, this is a job nobody loves. Is there anyone for whom this is maybe in a default zone or a growth zone? If it's in everyone's failure zone, it's maybe something that needs to be automated or outsourced, right? If you can automate or outsource the things that are in your failure zone, you have much better chances of keeping your people engaged. They're going to be so grateful. Thank you for taking that off my plate. It's not my favorite thing to do, right? So my recommendation in terms of this piece of engagement is to allow each of your team members to look at this will skill matrix and actually pinpoint, drop their jobs into one of those 4 quadrants, right? Have them think about what are the primary things that I do all day, every day, or once a month, or whatever their cadence is, and figure out what's in my default zone, what's in my growth zone, what's in my failure zone, and then start to negotiate how do we get you out of failure and default as much as possible. Not all the time, can't happen, but as much as possible, right? That's going to create better chance for engagement. I do like this quote. It appears that the epidemic of active disengagement we see in workplaces every day could be a curable disease if we can help the people around us develop their strengths. We want them in their sweet spot or in their growth zone. Those are the places where you want your people to live at least the majority of their time. Thank you, Kenley. Okay, there's a lot on this slide. I probably should have made it 2 slides, and I apologize. But I want to talk about kind of 2 really important concepts for employee engagement, for team engagement. The first one is feedback loops. How many of you have given feedback to a company you've worked for before, and they did nothing with it? Thanks for that feedback. We're not gonna do anything with that. That is so deflating. It is so frustrating. And it can actually create huge feelings of resentment between you and your employer or you and your team. So my recommendation in terms of feedback for engagement is, number 1, create a feedback loop. Create a system where people can give you feedback. Whether that's an ongoing system or whether it's kind of a cyclical system. I will say that employee surveys, like the annual culture survey or something, those are really ineffective. They're not often enough. People don't have any faith you're going to do anything with it. That tool is not available to them in the moment when they have the feedback. So when you are creating a feedback loop system, a way for your people to communicate what's going well and what's not with you, they need to have access to it in the moment when they see the problem, right? In the moment when they have the feedback. And you need to do something with it. Don't just take people's feedback and not do anything with it. The 3 most important things about feedback are that it's timely, they have opportunity to give feedback in the moment when it matters, that you do something with it or you try. You have to at least take that feedback under consideration. And finally, that you're transparent about what you did about it. If you thought about it really hard, you took it to your board or you took it to your team or you really simmered on that idea and you decided that it wasn't feasible, but you never tell them, I've deeply considered your idea, Patty, and these are the reasons that I've decided I don't think we can do it, at least at this time. Now Patty knows she was heard, right?
And that's validating, because
Yes.
I do know I was heard.
Right, even if you can't act on every piece of recommendation that you get, if you communicate back, we've really given this some thought. Here are the reasons that we can't act on it right now, but thank you for sharing that with us. It matters that we know what you think, right? You want your people to feel seen, heard, safe, and known. If you can make that happen, you've gone so far in terms of creating an employee engagement culture. So a simple, systematic, and ongoing method for collecting it, adapting in response, and then transparently communicating with your team. Make sure that they know what you're doing with that feedback ongoingly. Do you have any questions about the feedback loop system? Is anyone using one? I'll bet you are and you don't know. Haley, call it out. What's our feedback system?
Our teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
Our office completes the team, and we get some great feedback that way.
Yeah, that's a great tool. Thank you for calling that out. What other feedback loops do you have built in? How many of you are doing check-ins with your employees or your team? Yeah, check-ins can be your feedback system. That can be part of it, right? Now, they have to feel safe, to be honest with you. They have to feel listened to when you give it to them. And those check-ins can't be just an annual check-in, right? They have to be happening often enough that people can give you feedback when it's on their mind, when it has emerged in their work. But a check-in system, a weekly or a bi-weekly or even a monthly check-in system can be your feedback tool, if that's what you have. Some people use like an ongoing open survey kind of system. Some people will use a comments box kind of a system. And any of those things can work, right? A bulletin board or a Post-it board, that can be part of your feedback system, as long as you do something with it and you communicate what's being done, right? And then the next piece, and we've talked about this in Future Ready, I think ongoingly. I feel like I've taught onboarding and mentorship a dozen times. I haven't really, but it weaves its way through all of our conversations. The idea that onboarding is not something that happens for 1 hour or 1 day or 1 week or 1 month. Onboarding is always happening. For a really, really solid onboarding system, you need at least a year of mentorship, because most of us are not really good at our jobs till at least 2 years in, right? Sometimes longer. So your onboarding plan needs to be really structured and significant. You need to be having really regular check-ins with your people so you know how they're feeling about things. So you understand if they're connecting with the culture, so that you've negotiated, are my expectations and your expectations of flexibility in our workplace, are we aligned there, or is there still a disconnect, right? If you don't know that, you've got to check in with your people. You have to have kind of an ongoing checking in and mentoring system, so that you understand the reality of what people are doing. Now, you know that I'm going to take this apart. I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to. It's so pretty right now. We read, I love it here. If you haven't signed up for the Academy and haven't received a copy and you're interested, please talk to us about that. We'll give you a free copy. This book is interesting because Clint Pulver, the author, runs, I think it's still running, the Undercover Millennial Program. The whole point of that program was he would go into companies and pose as a person who was going to have a job interview there. I'm going to get a job with your company. But he would talk to the everyday employees working the floor, entry-level employees, and say, I'm thinking about getting a job here. Aowen, what's it like to work here? And Aowen would say back, I love my job. I love my team. This is a great place to work. I hope you do get a job. I'd like to work with you. They'd give like really good energy. Or they'd be like, I am looking for another job, and if I could find one in a hot second, I would be gone. I hate this place. I hate my manager. I hate my team. I don't like the work that we're doing. And they would be really, really honest with him because there was no pressure. He was a potential employee who may or may not work there. He's not in a position of authority, right? He's not from inside the company. He doesn't understand all the dirt that's happening inside the company. So they'd be really deeply honest with him. And then he could take that feedback anonymously and in a safe, ethical way back to the leader and say, you might think that you have a really healthy culture, but more than half of your employees are already looking for other work and they're dissatisfied in their work. And this is why. These are the reasons that they're telling me that they're unhappy. So you have a culture problem. Let me help you fix it. That was the Undercover Millennial Program. Whatever your feedback loop is, however your mentorship program works, one of the most important things is that people feel that they can be honest with you, that there's an emotional safety in being honest. So a lot of companies will institute a feedback system that is anonymous. The one challenge with the anonymous feedback system is if you work in a really small place, most people are going to know where that feedback came from anyway. A lot of us do work in small places, so anonymity is difficult. And the other thing is an anonymous system doesn't encourage you to have a deep, open, honest conversation like in your check-in, right? If I know that you're the one that came to me with this concern, then when I need some ideas for how to fix it, I figure you've probably spent some bandwidth on that, right? And I can ask you, what are your ideas about how we might fix that? Tell me more about that problem.
And plus, I've gotten the emails that are like super vague about what somebody's doing wrong, but they won't say who. Like, is it me? I don't even know. Like that is so unproductive. It just makes everyone feel unsafe.
It is. And I will say I have both personal experience and a lot of relational experience with workplace cultures where the manager will take a blanket approach to solving problems. I got this piece of feedback, and so we're going to make a blanket policy we're just going to make a blanket policy about this, right? Or we're going to take an action that changes something for the entire company, the entire team, all of our customers or vendors or whatever it is. And it doesn't actually solve the problem because the person that made the complaint may not have been specific enough, right? So you may be solving the wrong problem. You don't have enough background information to know if your solution is going to solve that problem. And people feel the person that makes the complaint is not going to see themselves in your solution. How can I say that more specifically? A person who complains about something rather routinely, if you create a blanket solution, they will probably not feel like you have met their need, right? And part of it is because they needed to be heard, and they don't feel heard in a blanket solution. They still really, as human beings, we really require communication. We need to connect with people, right? We want to have a one-on-one conversation. And I want to feel when I have a conversation with you that I am seen, heard, safe, known, and you want to feel that too, right? And if we create a blanket solution without really digging into the source of the problem, the background of it, the feelings beneath it, our people are not going to feel like they were heard, even if we tried to solve the problem. And I think it's really dangerous to create a culture where blanket solutions are our answer to everything rather than having difficult conversations. Because sometimes that conversation might be difficult, right? Lane, if you've complained about something 4 times and we sit down and we talk about it, and I'm actually there to listen, I'm open to hearing your history, your experience with this problem, we're going to get to a feeling level. And a lot of us avoid a feeling level in the workplace because we're afraid of it. It's hard to talk about feelings, right? But if we don't ever get to the feeling level and you have strong feelings, no solution I create is ever going to meet your need. Your need is to be heard and understood. It's to express those feelings, right? We're human, and when we treat each other like machines, we're never going to get down to the heart of that problem. If there's an emotional problem underneath it, you need to have an emotional conversation, which can be scary, right?
Plus,
Yeah.
all the people that are not doing it wrong,
Mm-hmm.
to speak,
Yeah.
call you and say, is this me? And
Right.
it's not you. Just because that supervisor is trying to avoid having that hard
Yes.
conversation, creating so much more work for herself and causing just a level of disrespect in a way. I don't
Yeah, it feels like distrust, doesn't it? And you create resentment. Like if you know that Lane was the one that made the complaint and now you have to deal with a blanket solution that changes your workflow, are you going to resent him?
Well, I might be happy that he complained about it.
Right.
I was feeling the same, but I'm going to resent if he was the one doing it and then I have to fix everything.
Right. Right.
If it's just back to that one person that you need to deal with and have the hard conversation, that's a whole lot less work for everybody, and your other people are going to see that you handle things.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Patty. Totally correct. So we've talked about your feedback mechanism. We've talked about this ongoing mentorship and being willing to have hard conversations, one-on-one conversations that get real with the emotions underneath those sorts of things. There is a do's and don'ts of employee feedback loops, and my biggest one is don't just collect the feedback. If you don't plan on doing anything with it, don't even collect it. I think you should be collecting it, but you need to collect it, do something about it, and then communicate. Okay? Okay, Lane also talked about recognition, the idea that people feel appreciated, right, for the work that they're doing. And that doesn't have to be like a prize or an award, but it needs to be something that feels real and applicable to them. We had this system in our office for a little while, which I'm going to share with you because I thought it was hilarious. So it looked like the Facebook thumbs up. It was a ceramic, and it was about this big. It was the thumb, right? And each month we would have our staff meeting, and whoever had received the thumbs up award the month before would pick someone else on the team who they appreciated, that they really wanted to give a thank you or a shout out to. Patty, you've done a really, really great job this week, or Tara, gosh, thank you so much for helping me with that project, right? And so they would pass the thumb along publicly. There was a little fanfare, in our meetings with that. We had one team member that was like, don't you dare ever give me that freaking thumb. I don't want it. I don't want the public accolades. It makes me really uncomfortable, right? And here we thought that we were just creating a culture of we appreciate each other and we can call each other out. But we were making some people, and probably more than that one person, right? One person was brave enough to say, I don't like this. Probably other people may have felt that as well, right? So one of the most important things about recognition is that it's not just a checklist thing, and it's not one size fits all. One size fits all recognition systems are a step, but they're like a tiny little baby step that doesn't take as much effort and energy than thinking about what would Monica really, really like, right? how would Jeremiah actually like to be recognized for the work that he's doing? Or let's say if I know, for example, that Shane really hates public recognition, then maybe I just need to have a one-on-one conversation. Or maybe a note is his style, right? With it, there you go. That's, you and I, we're on the same wavelength. But so finding out the ways that people want to be recognized, what actually feels comfortable to them, what actually feels really good to them. You've probably heard the five love languages. Has anybody looked into love languages? So there's this great book, 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. It's like love languages, but for work, right? Same authors. And they talk about a lot of times your language of appreciation in the workplace may not be the same as your love language with your family. Totally fine. That's normal. I'm a big hugger at home with my family, but I really don't hug in the workplace, right? But looking at the ways that people want to be recognized, the things that feel comfortable, that feel appreciative to them, and then really making sure that you're personalizing your thanks in that way. You may have an employee who wants that recognition, who you want to step out in the workplace and say, hey, I'd just really like to recognize Pat for all of her efforts this month. This is the project she was working on and has gone above and beyond. And that may feel really good to her, but somebody else might really hate that, right? So here are the 5 ways to make recognition actually work. And there's a ton of research that says not being recognized for the work that you do is really deflating, and it causes people to disengage. If you do not feel appreciated for the work that you do, you will disengage from that work. So first, that it fulfills their expectations. The amount you receive makes sense. For example, if I do a thing that I just think is like a normal, regular part of my job and it's not that big of a deal and it only takes me 10 minutes, and my boss gushes and gushes over it, that feels fake and weird and like they're a little out of touch, and you know what I mean? It's appreciation, but it's just not appropriate for what I did. Authentic means it feels like I really cared. I'm not just checking a box. Oh, what's our employee appreciation program this month? Guess I have to do that. But that if I come to you and express appreciation, you believe that I actually care, that I'm actually appreciative, that I'm grateful for what you did, right? That it's personalized. It's the Reese's peanut butter cup and the note, or not. If they're allergic to peanuts, don't give them a Reese's peanut butter cup, okay? That would be so inappropriate. That it is equitable. It's given fairly without playing favorites. I have been a part of a workplace where the same person was like employee of the month for 3 months straight. That feels terrible. If you always feel like I'm putting as much effort into my job as this person is in their job, and they are always getting the accolades, and I get nothing, you're going to disengage. So it has to feel like it's the right amount, and it's really fair across your team. And finally, that it is embedded into an organization's culture. It's integrated day to day. It doesn't feel like a weird thing that we're doing one time. It feels like just a place where we appreciate each other, where we know each other. We know that Shane likes Reese's peanut butter cups, right? Where we are paying attention to what each other does. We're tuned in to the effort that one another puts in. That has to be a part of your culture. If you can do that, friends, you're going to keep your team, and the team's going to grow. It's going to be resilient and strong, and you will succeed together. Go ahead. So we are to the discussion portion, my favorite part of the day. Here are 3 ideas. We can talk about any of these in any order. How do you assess your team's connection, carrying a community? And I would say a part of this is what you think it is that really what it is? If you think it's a caring, connected community, but how do you know? Does everybody else feel the same way? And then is recognition for your team's effort appropriate for their needs and preferences? And how do you know? How are you getting accurate information about that? And what are other ways that we build engagement? Let's go.
Can I tell about something we've done?
Please do.
I work for the state in juvenile justice down in Washington, and we have a little survey that we do, not right at onboarding, because onboarding is too much, but in a while, and it assesses that, whether your gifts, accolades, all those things. And so our office manager has made these cute little people of us. Mm-hmm. We have a big head and this funny little body. They make elves out of us at Christmas, but there's bulletin boards in our conference room that have each
avatar.
Well, yeah, but each area. So
Uh-huh.
if it's gifts, and it has the people on
Oh.
there that are that. So if you're like, you want to give someone some accolades, you can just go in there and like, okay, this person likes gifts. This person wants a note. This one doesn't. This one wants a party, and this one wants to just be told, give them a raise.
Right.
Right? And so it's kind of cool that way. And the other thing I've learned is that people will give they'll do for others what theirs is.
Mhm.
So if you don't know, you can kind of watch that and see. But
Yeah.
it's been really fun. And it's fun, and everybody has no one's called out. We're all on there,
Right.
and it's just been really fun, and it makes it nice. I just actually pulled my list out a couple days ago. From that, I have it on a list to see one of my guys that needs some accolades, and he's gifts. That's easy.
Right.
You
Well,
know?
it's easy if you know him,
Yeah.
but you could also give a gift that wouldn't mean much to him if
Well,
you
I
didn't
know
know him,
he
right?
I know he likes sunflower seeds and
See,
Coke.
look at that. That's great. Todd.
To the answer to your first question there, the thing that always clued me in that we were getting it right is when we would have a staff meeting and I would ask someone, how are you doing with this goal that you set? Is that I've hit a roadblock. Someone else unsolicited said, I can get together with you and help you with that.
They're connected.
You're doing something right when you don't have to coerce them or ask them or direct them to help someone. They do it of their own accord because they want to see the team be successful.
Yeah.
That's what you just said. They also felt safe enough to say, I hit a roadblock.
Yeah.
To bring that problem to the team that's a good measure of your of safety. And
Yeah, if they're willing to be vulnerable with each other, right?
Yeah, that's big.
I love it. What else?
I've got 3 employees right now. Well, 2 and a quarter. Because I've got one as a high schooler and it's softball season, so I sometimes see her. But usually when they come in is when I'm gone. Like I had to leave because I've got a teammate in there, like an employee that's fixing a bike for me right now. And just has a couple of questions. She's in that, like we're going on that will. She's got a high will but low skill on the bikes. Out of just not knowing yet. And just talking to her on the phone, she's got a simple task that she's working through. She's like, I have the will to learn more and I want to do more. So she's open and willing to be taught, which is awesome. We've been really, really blessed with, I'd say 95% of our employees. But using her as an example, I mean, we are typically closed today, so that's why I figured this meeting would be great. And then I had some things come up. So she was able to jump in there and do that. But being able to call and say, hey, I've got this thing happening. Are you able to be there? And her being willing and showing my appreciation for that is what's helping her want to continue and want to learn more and do more. So it's been, I don't know where I'm going with this anymore.
Well, gratitude feeds commitment, right? If she knows you're grateful, she's willing to commit extra.
She's willing to commit more, and she's like, I would love to learn more. So we've got an open relationship where she's willing to say, I don't know, but let's do more. So she's been a great example. One of the prime examples. My other employees as well are doing really well.
I love that. One of the things that our team has kind of come to a point where we've decided to do is we collect this teamwork every month and we report it out to the employer. Whatever teamwork we get from your team, we share that back with you. And it should give you some feedback from your team, hopefully in that kind of safe, honest space, because it's anonymous, right? And so the more members of your team that answer the teamwork, the better information you get from that. But I have to tell you, I feel like I benefit from the teamwork more than any of you do, which is sad. I want it to be of great benefit to you as well. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to start doing some kind of key takeaways and trends that we find in our teamwork in our monthly newsletter, so I can share that back out with you. But gratitude has come up interestingly in a couple of different sessions that I didn't think we really even talked very much about that, but your employer being grateful for the work that you do has emerged multiple times in the teamwork, that people want to know that they are noticed.
One of the things that we do, and Todd sort of talked about that as well, is getting away and having a team.
Like an off-site.
We've done retreats and things
Yeah.
like that, and typically they're once a quarter. And the thing is that we have you earn it. It's competition. The 3
Yeah.
months prior, we set these goals, and a lot of them are, there's individual goals as well as, for those of us on the leadership team and so on, that goals to help the up and coming agents, right?
Yeah.
To reach their goals. And so there's a mentorship that's involved, all of those types of, on different levels, things that, it's creating, again, synergy between all the team and so on to get to go on this retreat. And our brokers, they totally spoil us when they go there. They have a chef come in sometimes and cook the meals and, things like that. But then we also, part of that is getting to be part of that group that's at that table when they do the brainstorming session for the next quarter, okay, and setting the goals and the contest and what's it going to be, and even planning the next retreat. It's amazing what comes out of that, because in those conversations also, the things that, what did you struggle with, what could we do better, and moving forward. So it's really cool.
I love kind of two ideas that you've brought out. One is we want to be at the table, right? So making space for people at the decision-making table is really important, because it's a lot easier to buy into something that you helped to decide or create. And the other thing is acting as a mentor to someone. That person will be grateful. When we've been the recipient of mentorship, we're grateful for that mentorship, right? But I want you to think about a time when you have mentored someone else. It means something to you too, because we feel needed, right? We recognize that someone recognized that we have experience or wisdom to share, and they wanted that from us. So we feel needed and we feel appreciated for our experience. Does that make sense? Mentorship is good not just for the mentee, it's good for the mentor as well. So anytime you can create cycles of that, that's helpful for both parties, not just for the people receiving the mentorship, but for everybody. It builds bonds between people. Will you go back one slide? I wanted to call this out. Non-work recognition connects people to their culture at a plus 75% rate. People feel 75% more connected in their workplace when you know something about them that has nothing to do with work. When you recognize, we have team members that are graduating next week, and we know who they are. And we congratulate them on that. Or somebody's having a baby, or somebody's accomplished something in their outside life. When you know about your employees' outside lives and you recognize them for those things, then they feel that seen, heard, safe, known. They feel that at a much deeper level, even than recognizing their effort within your company. So knowing them on a human level matters to people pretty significantly. Okay, Kenley, you can move forward. Teamwork, one more. Okay, our team survey this month, remember it's for everybody, not just for you, but also for your teammates, to rate your sense of community, caring, and connection, and share specifically what makes you feel that sense of connection with your team. To call out whether your team members feel like they're recognized appropriately based on their work and their needs and their preferences, and then how do you know that? How does your organization collect feedback, and what do they do with it? And then rating your organization's career development opportunities. When you receive your feedback at the end of the month, we're hoping this will give you kind of some pinpoint some of your strengths and potentially some of your company's weaknesses. So when we are able to give that back to you, but of course that only works if you're not the only one that fills out your teamwork, right? One more click. Nope, one more. TOC collaboration. So if you're working with a targeted outreach coordinator, we have 2 in the room. Susan, actually kind of 3, Sierra and Kenley work with, which 4 counties? Sanpete, Juab, Sevier and Wayne County here. And call out your counties.
Iron, Beaver, Piute, Garfield, and
Millard. There we go. And then we do have another TOC, April Ficklin, who works with Kane and Washington counties. If you're working with a targeted outreach coordinator for business support services, referrals, and connections, for action planning and implementation and data collection and analysis within your company, then you could have a conversation with them about your feedback process or how to build some employee recognition within your company. If that feels like a weak spot for you and you want to spend some work there, talk to your TOC about that. Final click. One more. How can we strengthen our culture of caring and connection? I think that's the most key question that you can ask your team. All of those other things are things for you to know, but really this is what you need to be talking to them about. How do we care about each other in our community? Okay? Go ahead. And what might our team need that we aren't currently doing? They're probably going to have some ideas and some feelings. You want to know what those things are. So this is a recommended discussion for you to have with your team on site. Next. If you have not already joined our Business Leaders Academy, we would appreciate it and invite you to do so. You attend 8 sessions, complete 8 teamworks, and read the book, and we will badge you on the stage at One Utah Summit in October. Last year it was the Lieutenant Governor who awarded those badges. It's a pretty cool opportunity, and you'll learn a lot along the way and build a network of connection with other people who are like-minded and maybe facing some similar challenges, hopefully give you a resource. You could also work on your FutureReady Worksite certification with those targeted outreach coordinators that I've already called out. And what is next? This is the link to our teamwork for you and your teams. This is to RSVP for our next month's session in Tropic, Garfield County, where we will be talking about breaking barriers, thriving in rural economies, which is kind of a niche thing. It's weird, and it's definitely different than living in an urban area. And then finally, if you'd like to register to earn your Business Academy badge, that's that third QR code. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us in Marysville. It's been lovely.